The first 3 years of my marriage were wonderful. The next 8 years were fine, and the last 8 were miserable. There was no good reason why I put up with it. I don't know if it was because I hoped things would get better or because I was just too damn lethargic. Marcia and I got married right after graduation. I laid bricks, she served tables, and we did well, at least for the first 2 years. The next year, everything changed, and I didn't even know it. Of course, I knew she was pregnant, and of course, I thought she was mine. I didn't actually find out my daughter wasn't mine until 8 years later. As Claire grew up, Marcia and I's relationship deteriorated. It wasn't sudden or abrupt, just a slow deterioration. Marcia stopped working when Claire was born. I was earning enough to provide us with comfort, but not high style. I didn't immediately notice that Marcia and Claire always had stylish new closets. She never spent an inordinate amount of money from the family budget on personal items, but they were always well dressed. I noticed this, but never told her about it. When Claire was little, we seemed to get along fine, but as she got older, she became a little moody. I told Marcia about it, but she just brushed it off. At that moment, I realized that Claire was becoming just like her mother. Our personal relationship was fading fast. Our sex life was on the wane. I no longer initiated sex, but responded if she did. I took what I could get, but it was all kind of cold. I was slowly saving money so we could buy a house. When things changed, I lost interest. I stashed the money in a safe place and kept adding to it. Claire's 10th birthday was approaching, and I got off work early and went across town to try to find a present for her. Across the street was a small city park. It was in a business district that I very rarely visited. Marcia was sitting in the park on one of the benches with an older man in a suit. Claire sat between them with a big smile on her face. Everything was starting to make sense now. I walked into the cafe, sat by the window, and watched them for almost an hour. They laughed and chatted like a family. We didn't do that anymore. They all stood up and hugged each other. The stranger kissed Marcia on the cheek and waved goodbye as he crossed the street. I followed him until he entered the Barclays building. Malcolm Eugene Foote was a financial consultant and had a small office on the 3rd floor of the Barclay building. That was all I needed to know at this point. Up to this point, I had made every effort to be pleasant and friendly at home. Once in a while, I would bring Marcia flowers and small gifts just for fun. Now, however, I had become indifferent. I told Marcia that I was having trouble sleeping because of a sudden back problem. I bought a new mattress and moved into the spare room. Marcia didn't protest. Claire's birthday came and went. I didn't get her a present, and it didn't seem to bother her. In fact, she never mentioned it. My work days got longer. I would leave the house early in the morning and come home as late as after dinner in the evening. Marcia mentioned it a few times, but then stopped. She continued to keep the house normal for herself and Claire. They sort of adjusted their lives to accommodate me in my absences. It was never discussed. She continued to do my laundry and keep my room organized. On weekends, I did the yard and any necessary housework. All bills were paid as usual. They seemed to be doing just fine without me. With the extra hours of work, I had more money to add to my stash. On weekends, I had dinner with Marcia and Claire, but they were quiet and somber. It was never discussed. The suffering went on for 8 years. I didn't know when or where Marcia and Claire met Malcolm again. I didn't care. It wasn't important. And then it happened. I came home from work late one night. Marcia and Claire were sitting there crying. I went into the kitchen and had a quick beer before heading to my room. The local newspaper was lying on the kitchen table, turned to the classifieds. It was odd, so I pulled the paper up and took a closer look. Surprise! Surprise! The obituaries listed Malcolm Eugene Foote's name. Turns out he had no living relatives. Funeral arrangements were handled by Universal Crematory Service Chapel, and the estate was handled by William Estes and Sons. Seymour Schlump and I graduated high school together. He went to Dickerson and I didn't. He was a mediocre lawyer and I was a bricklayer. We were buddies. Time was running out. I always wanted to say that. I explained the whole situation to Seymour. I had no proof that Malcolm was Claire's father. It was just a hunch that spurred me into action. If Malcolm had no immediate family and had any fortune, he must have left it to someone. Seymour thought it would be a fun project. We settled on alimony. Claire had already turned 18. I paid for her maintenance for 24 months. Of course, during that time, Malcolm had spent a hell of a lot buying her clothes and stuff, but I wasn't going to bring that up. To make things look more accurate, we settled on $900 a month. Of course, that was still just an assumption. So we filed a claim against the estate for $183,600. I didn't want to be greedy, I just wanted a piece of the pie. One copy was sent to the probate court and another to William Estes and Son. Seymour also wanted to arrange a divorce for me, but I refused. Malcolm was cremated. I don't know what became of the ashes. 2 months later, Marcia received a letter from William Estes and Son about the reading of Malcolm Eugene Foote's will. I found the letter in her night table. I didn't get the letter, but Seymour did. The reading of the will was handled by William Estes, Jr., Marcia Graves, her daughter Claire, and Seymour Schlump, Martin Graves' attorney, were present. Seymour said that Marcia and Claire were totally shocked when I was awarded the full amount I had asked for. My wife and daughter each got $16,400. That was all that was left after I got mine. When the will was read, it clearly stated that Malcolm would leave all of his property to Marcia and his biological daughter equally. That in itself was enough to prove paternity. Surprisingly, no one challenged it. I never divorced Marcia. I moved to Chattanooga and bought a new pickup truck. I have a small stash of money. I found some local contractors who have happily agreed to take me on small part-time jobs. Now I can move forward.